is something that's not going to be a good situation. And in that particular circumstance, here's what's really cool about the example that you just gave.
Yep.
One of the hardest things for us to do, and I don't care how long you've been on this path, and this is where it's okay to be human. I know we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. I'm not denying that. I never will, because I'm totally there with that. But we've agreed to be human, or we'd all be dead right now. Do you agree with that? Okay? So, from that perspective, if I look at what the Buddhists have to say on that particular subject, that's exactly what Buddha says. Buddha says, hey, you agreed to be human while you're here. Yes, there is duality. When there's not duality, you'll be dead, you'll be with me. Okay, so if we're all on that page, it's okay to recognize, to discern, not judge, that I have a physical reaction,
Yeah.
a very strong physical reaction to the presence of this other person. And it's okay. It just is. It just is. The person sitting next to you doesn't have that reaction to that person, but you do. And it's not good and it's not bad. It's not about judging that person. It's simply discerning that that person is not right for you. Okay? Now, Cindy's lucky, because the only way that she would have a physical reaction to somebody that she's not resonating with is if she's grounded and in her body. So she's accomplished one of those things that it takes to be in chaotic living, to be grounded and in her body. Okay? Sometimes, however, it's not that simple. If you're somebody who has come out of a situation in your life, particularly in early childhood, where you were abused or you grew up in an abusive household, where it can range anything from you were a witness to the abuse, meaning that you may not have necessarily been abused physically in some way, or even psychologically abused in the technical definition of that. But you grew up in that atmosphere, you grew up in that energy, and you're a witness. So you grew up with abuse. To the person in your family, or you may be that person in your family who was actually abused. So there's a spectrum there. And in that spectrum, we've grown up in a system where we have to make a decision as we grow up and get out of that system about whether or not we're going to stay in with that energy vampire type of behavior, because that's what an abusive family system is. It's a bunch of energy vampires who got together and said, ooh, let's feed off of each other. Yeah. And so what do we have created? We have a legacy of evil, is what M. Scott Peck calls it, that gets created in a family system. Now, the really cool thing about that is that at some point in time, the energies all shifted, and we started to have legacy breakers. We started to have people who were waking up vibrationally enough to be able to say, I'm not going to be the person who continues that legacy in this family. And what's really cool about that is that from a scientific perspective, what they have been able to prove scientifically is that people who are abused, physically or emotionally, psychologically, actually have changes in their brain systems, in their neurological patterns, that actually form during their lifetimes in reaction to the stress of being abused. And that neurological change in the brain gets passed on physically to the next generation. And that's one of the ways that, from a physical perspective, evil or energy vampirism actually becomes a system, a family system. It becomes a legacy in a family. And I know this, and I studied this greatly because I come from one of those systems. My grandfather was left a legacy of 65 plus years of sexual abuse and rape. And so one of the tools that I used to get through all of that, and realizing at the age of 15 that I actually was the legacy breaker in my family, was to get through the psychology of what was I actually dealing with. And so one of the ways that we can use to help us deal with the chaos in our lives is to be able to identify what behaviors we're actually experiencing. And I